Kara here from The Kara Golden Show. If you're not using Ironclad for contracts, you could be leaving millions on the table. Ironclad's AI instantly surfaces what matters: renewal dates, pricing terms, and obligations, so you can act quickly before opportunities slip away. That's why they're trusted by great brands like OpenAI, L'Oreal, Salesforce, and so many others. Find the savings hiding in your contracts at ironcladapp.com/podcast. That's ironcladapp.com/podcast.
This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace.
Last year, I went through many different life changes. I needed to take a pause and examine how I was feeling in the inside to better show up for the ones who need me to be my best version of myself.
When you're navigating life's changes, Talkspace can help. Talkspace is the #1 rated online therapy, bringing you professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatry providers that you can access anytime, anywhere.
Living a busy life, navigating a long-distance relationship, becoming a first-step father, Talkspace made all of those journeys possible. I could speak with my therapist in the office. I could speak with my therapist in the comfort of my home. I was never alone.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Inside Out Smile. I'm your host, Dr. Amber Q, and it's been such a strange week. So let's dive straight in. So many things have happened. I think that everyone's feeling very strange about the way that the world is, I don't know, the way things are in the world. I was going to say the way of the world at the moment, which is a novel by William Congreve, but just the way things are right now. And I kind of want to speak about grief. And I have alluded to grief in previous podcasts or previous episodes, but I'm now thinking about, I'm thinking about a few things. And so I'm thinking about grief in the background that we have, grief for humanity because of where we are right now, just the state of the world. And it's so interesting. So the other day, literally yesterday, I bumped into, I saw this lovely dog who was pot poodle. And it was so lovely, and came up to say hello to me, then went to say hello to somebody else. And then the owner was walking on, and the dog suddenly didn't realise where the owner was. And I was saying, oh, your owner's there, your owner's there. And the owner was walking ahead, and I was like, cooey, excuse me, your dog doesn't realise where you are. So he turned back to find his dog, and he said, thank you. And as he turned, I realised it was somebody that I kind of knew, using air quotes here. It was a chap who used to have a miniature schnauzer, and you may recall, if you're a regular listener, that in previous episodes I've mentioned sort of, my days of sort of hanging out on the common with my poodle, and there were a couple of people that were regulars there. And this chap wasn't as regular as the regulars, but he was still, sort of quite a fairly regular person on the common. I think the main people were myself, another friend who had pugs. There was another couple that had pugs, and there was an actress who had sort of an Italian greyhound, and there was another chap. The other chap was slightly separate, and this chap was slightly separate. Anyway, I was kind of like, oh, hi. I couldn't remember his name. And but I remembered he was a ex-police inspector, and he was like, oh, yeah, hi. Anyway, so we ended up chatting, and he was telling me how he was now working for a homeless charity. And we had a chat, and he was telling me everything about how sort of there's a real mental health crisis in London, and the amount of people. I mean, I know with the cost of living prices, there are, crisis rather, there are a lot of people that are becoming homeless. And he was speaking about the mental health crisis, because of course it must obviously take a toll on one's mental health. And so we were kind of chatting and we were walking along, and his dog was so adorable. And he was just speaking about people who are unwell and unsupported. And it was just so sad just to hear about all these people, you know. And the thing is, it's not just one story, I think, that's so sad, because in a way, and I've been struggling actually to articulate this, but I think that so many people are struggling right now because this grief for humanity is, I think, all consuming, because so many people are suffering all over the world. And it seems that the powerful are instigating these things. And it's just, I don't know, it's, you know, it's just, in one way, it can be quite overwhelming. And it's interesting because grief, I think, you know, normally you would think of grief as a personal thing, but I'm going to share some more stories. But I feel that at the moment, there's so much grief, collective grief for humanity. And, you know, the only way I can describe it is it's grief by resonance, right? We're seeing people that are suffering so much, and yes, call that empathy. But yeah, I mean, the way the world is, you know, the state of the world, it's very worrying. And I think the thing is that I read something recently, and that was that, you know, as attention becomes more scarce, and as lots of interactions are online, there are a lot of sort of superficial relationships. And people think, oh, I've got friends and things, but those relationships, they're quite thin. And somebody was saying that essentially that relationships are built upon depth and meaning. And we don't have that anymore. That's becoming drained. And I think it's partly because attention is superficial, it's scarce, and also because people are just distracted and stretched and things. And so I think in that sense, there is that aspect as well. And it's funny, there's this Instagram account that I follow, and I found it through Highclere Castle, the home of Downton Abbey. And it's a lady who has a lovely family, lots of horses. Again, I've mentioned this before on one of my episodes. The horses come in and out the house. I just love that account so much, but I'm not online that much. And so occasionally I see it, and I saw a post today, and the post essentially said that people are accusing her of being, you know, of having AI generated content. And I thought, that is absolutely crazy, because her content is so authentic. Messy children, horses almost creating accidents because they're wandering in and out of the house when she's baking cakes and things. She's riding. You really feel the atmosphere, you know, because quite often, obviously, it's in the UK, so it's cold, it's raining, it's wet. You can see the apples, you know, if the kids are sitting on a horse and trying to grab apples off the apple tree. It's so authentic. For somebody to say that that's AI generated just makes me laugh. And the comments all showed that people were getting worried. Again, this kind of collective grief about the state of humanity and the world. And I just thought to myself, oh my gosh, you know, it's crazy, isn't it? This, you know, suspicion that some people have. I mean, I don't know if they were trolling her, but I just thought, oh my gosh, you know, if they're genuinely uncertain about whether or not it's AI, then for some people, they're finding it even harder to connect. And I don't know, I just feel that it's so interesting that I think grief isn't attached to just closeness, because these are things that we're kind of witnessing remotely. So it attaches to meaning. And there's another story that I'd like to share, which part of maybe I've shared before. So years ago, through family connections, we met a a couple, sort of my parents met a couple and they were really lovely. And they had said to me that I reminded them of their daughter in several ways. We had a few commonalities. And it was funny because it felt oddly kind of specific. They were sort of saying that personality-wise, I was like her, professionally, etc. And I guess it created this kind of strange sense of closeness, not because I knew her, but because apparently I was quite like her. And so at the time she was married, and she was in love, and she just had her first child, and it was just so lovely, right? Okay, so then years later, I was thinking of her, and I think I've mentioned this before, and so I ended up sort of searching for her online. I think I was going to mention something to her and initiate contact, and I ended up on her husband's social media, and I realized, looking at his posts, that she had actually passed away a couple of years ago. And I'm pretty certain that I have mentioned this in a previous episode, because normally I do record in real time. And the thing is that I felt really devastated, And I felt for him because they were obviously in love. You could tell that by his posts. And obviously, the parents that her parents had told me sort of about how happy she was, etc. And so that was really, really sad. And I definitely mentioned it in an episode because I think I was saying that I'd spoken to my mum, and my mum was really upset as well. And I was just kind of like, oh my gosh, And I suppose I felt maybe that she was living a parallel life in certain ways. But anyway, I was really upset that she had passed away. And we all know that life is very fragile. And so it's really interesting because her husband is an actor that I grew up sort of seeing on the screen, and he was always a romantic hero, very charming and dashing, with that old school type of presence that makes, romance feel elegant. And it seems that he was like that in real life as well, because of a few things that the parents had mentioned about him and, and their life together. When we'd met them a few times. And as I said, but I'd never met her. Anyway, the other day, I found out that he had passed away as well. And now, interestingly, what I've noticed is that when people are madly in love, and if one passes away, quite often the other passes away. I would say, in my experience with my patients, and I had many patients like that, it was normally about 2 years. But this chap sadly had cancer and had passed away. And I just felt so sad because I think I had obviously seen him on screen, and it was just, so he's part of my childhood. And I think I mentioned this when Diana Keaton died recently as well. I'd said the same thing about her because I'd watched her, and she was kind of like, in a way, a romantic heroine, right, that I'd seen growing up. And so this chap was a romantic hero that I'd seen growing up. And so it felt, when I heard that he had passed, and he was known, from what the parents had said and from what I'd read about him, that he was the same sort of ilk in real life as well. So lovely person. And he'd made documentaries and things, and, had raised funds for good causes, etc. So seemed to be a lovely person, sort of both literally and figuratively as well. And so it just felt, with his passing, it felt like almost the end of an era. Almost, like a cultural mood shifting, because I think that style of tenderness, chivalry, masculinity is just less visible now. And I was just so upset to hear that he had passed as well. And I, again, told my mum, and she was really upset. And I don't know, I just thought to myself that it's so, I don't know, it's just that grief, isn't it? I think of, I don't know, that era where charm, gentleness, I don't know, it just seems to be less evident now. And I think that is to do with shallow emotions and the anxiety that seems so pervasive. And I just love this story so much, that they were madly in love and, they were just devoted to each other. And I think that is so beautiful. And I feel that, I don't know, I've learned so many lessons this week, because I think that, as I've said, and as a Muslim, we're all on a journey. And we're here only for a period of time. And I think the thing is, what lessons are we going to leave behind? What is our legacy going to be? So, I know that life is fragile. And I think that although their story has ended in this plane of reality, I don't know. I think, what I am mourning, and this is what I felt when she had passed, and when I heard about Diane Keaton, another person I don't know at all, had passed, was that, those people of that quality, it just feels as if sometimes, and she was known for her empathy as well. So I feel that is becoming, and obviously I am generalizing here, but it just feels that tenderness for humanity and empathy is just generally not as common as it should be. And so when I think about the lessons that I have learnt this week, I think that, that there are things that we can put into practice to keep humanity alive. And I think those things are attentiveness, when we know that attention is becoming scarce. Respect, without without people demanding it. You read about influencers demanding things. No, respect is something that is given. You cannot demand it from people. And I think that, devotion and charm, these things shouldn't be sort of with performance. And I think it's just really about warmth and care for each other and love that shows up, i.e., how do we treat people? We know that there are lots of social experiments on social media, but I'm talking about how do people treat each other when nothing is being filmed? And I think really, coming back to the ex-police inspector, if the world is feeling harsh and if people are falling through the cracks, we know that practicing warmth, empathy, and connection is kind of resisting that. And I feel really passionately about that. And I feel that I've grown so much in this week emotionally, but it's felt quite painful. And I'm not sure if this has all sort of made sense to you, my listener, my lovely listener who's listening. But I wanted to share it because I feel that, I don't know, I'm always saying, as you know, the tagline for this postcard, for this podcast, is about connection and changing lives. And I feel that, we can connect with others at different levels. And sometimes, why am I feeling this grief? Because I attached meaning to their story or to their persona, for example, with Diane Keaton. And even when we're watching people on screen, we feel that obviously we identify with them, which is why people make movies in the first place. But when you know the backstory as well, I think it lands harder. And I just feel that what I want to say, and the reason I've shared this, is that when we think about connection, I think it's not so much that kind of grand way of doing things, but it's just those small things: charm, chivalry, manners, tenderness, attentiveness. These things do not need to die out as that generation passes. Even if they pass at a younger age, we can improve those or bring those into our life. It doesn't have to be, as I said, in a grand way. It just needs to be in a human way. And I wonder whether there is anyone that you miss and any attributes that you miss about maybe a loved one or someone you've lost touch with. And maybe you can bring those into your life, because I think we definitely need that in the world right now. Humanity needs that. And humanity needs you to step up. We each have to step up and bring forth compassion, kindness, tenderness, just for the sake of your own moral compass. Not for ego, not for anything else, not for praise, nothing else except doing the right thing, treating humanity and your fellow beings with the respect and tenderness that they deserve, that each of us deserves. And so until the next episode, let's all create connection with gentleness and love. And let's not just change lives, but save lives.
Hey, y'all. As a growing family, my husband and I love game night, especially when it's Wayfair edition.
Let's do it. You gotta name as many Wayfair furniture and decor categories as you can. Ready? Go.
Sofas, bar stools, beds, ottomans, outdoor seating, bookshelves, kitchen tables, garden sheds, mid-century modern lamps.
Time. Nice. You got 9 out of a lot. Not too bad. Keep practicing by visiting wayfair.com, where you can shop every style for every home.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Hi, I'm Chris Gethard, and I'm very excited to tell you about Beautiful Anonymous, a podcast where I talk to random people on the phone. I tweet out a phone number, thousands of people try to call. You talk to one of them, they stay anonymous, I can't hang up, that's all the rules. I never know what's going to happen. We get serious ones. I've talked with meth dealers on their way to prison. I've talked to people who survived mass shootings. Crazy funny ones. I talked to a guy with a goose laugh, somebody who dresses up as a pirate on the weekends. I never know what's going to happen. It's a great show. Subscribe today, Beautiful Anonymous.